On my 18th birthday, my mother kicked me out of the house and gave my room to my sister. My name is Nicole, and what happened in the next few days after my mother abandoned me will shock you. The boxes were already stacked by the front door when I walked downstairs that morning. My boxes. 18 years of my life packed up like garbage waiting to be thrown out, and I hadn't packed a single one of them. My mother stood in the living room with her arms crossed, that cold expression on her face that I'd learned to recognize over the years, the one that meant her decision was final and there would be no discussion. "Happy birthday, Nicole," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. I stared at the boxes, then at her, trying to process what was happening. This had to be some kind of sick joke, some twisted test to see how I'd react. But the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. This was real. This was actually happening. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands were shaking, and I could feel my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. "This is your stuff," my mother replied, gesturing toward the boxes like she was pointing out something obvious. "Madison needs a bigger room for her art studio, and since you're 18 now, legally an adult, it's time for you to figure things out on your own." Madison. Of course it was about Madison, my 15-year-old sister who could do no wrong, who'd been handed everything on a silver platter since the day she was born, who got praised for breathing while I got criticized for existing. I looked toward the stairs, half expecting Madison to come down and say something, anything. But the house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. "You're kicking me out so Madison can have my room?" I said, and I hated how my voice cracked on the last word. My mother sighed like I was being difficult, like I was the unreasonable one in this situation. "Don't be so dramatic, Nicole. You're an adult now. It's time you learn to stand on your own 2 feet. Your father and I have supported you for 18 years. That's more than enough. More than enough." As if loving your child and providing for them was some kind of charitable act that came with an expiration date. As if the bare minimum of parenting deserved a medal and a thank you card. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her what kind of mother does this to their daughter on her birthday, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing I said ever mattered to her. I was just the mistake that came before Madison. The daughter who wasn't pretty enough, talented enough, special enough to deserve her love. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. And I hated how small my voice sounded, how desperate and pathetic. The words hung in the air between us like a plea I knew she wouldn't answer. "That's for you to figure out," my mother said, checking her watch like this conversation was taking up too much of her valuable time. "I have a hair appointment in an hour, so I need you to have everything out by then. The boxes are packed. Your father left $200 on the kitchen counter. That should be enough to get you started." $200, 18 years of my life, reduced to $200 and a stack of boxes by the front door. I stood there feeling like the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. I grabbed my phone from my pocket with trembling fingers and called the only person I thought might help me. My grandmother, my dad's mother, who lived about 40 minutes away in a small house on the outskirts of Portland. She'd always been kind to me, always seemed to see me when everyone else looked right through me. The phone rang 3 times before she answered, and I held my breath, praying she would pick up. "Grammy, it's Nicole," I said, and my voice broke completely. "Mom is kicking me out. She packed my stuff and she's making me leave today. I don't have anywhere to go. Can I please stay with you?" The words tumbled out in a rush, desperate and raw. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a horrible moment I thought she was going to say no, that she was going to side with my mother and tell me I deserved this. But then she spoke, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Put your mother on the phone right now," she said, and I'd never heard her sound so furious. I handed the phone to my mother, watching her face as Grammy spoke. Whatever my grandmother was saying, it wasn't pretty. My mother's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed, and her knuckles went white as she gripped the phone. "She's 18, Margaret. This is our decision as her parents," my mother said coldly. There was more talking from Grammy's end, and then my mother's face flushed red. "How we raise our daughters is none of your concern," she snapped. And then she hung up the phone and shoved it back at me. "Your grandmother is on her way," my mother said through gritted teeth. "You can wait outside with your things." She turned and walked toward the kitchen without another word, dismissing me like I was a stranger who'd overstayed their welcome. I looked at the boxes again, at the life I'd known packed away in cardboard and tape, and felt something inside me crack. This was really it. This was how my family was throwing me away. I grabbed the first box and carried it outside to the front porch, then went back for another and another, until all 6 boxes were sitting on the concrete steps. The morning air was cold against my skin, and I realized I was still in my pajamas. I hadn't even had time to get dressed, to eat breakfast, to process what was happening. My 18th birthday, the day that was supposed to mark the beginning of my adult life, and I was being kicked out like trash. I sat down on the top step and wrapped my arms around my knees, trying to stop myself from shaking. What had I done to deserve this? What was so wrong with me that my own mother couldn't stand to have me in the house one more day? I heard the front door open behind me and turned to see Madison standing there, still in her nightgown, her hair messy from sleep. She looked at the boxes, then at me, and for a moment I thought I saw guilt flash across her face. "Nicole, I didn't know she was going to do this," Madison said quietly. "I just mentioned that I needed more space for my art supplies, and Mom said she had an idea. I didn't think she meant this. I swear." Her voice sounded small and uncertain, so different from her usual confident tone. "It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. Madison was just a kid, a spoiled kid who'd never been told no in her life, but she wasn't the villain here. Our mother was. "But you're getting my room, so I guess it worked out for you, right?" The bitterness in my voice was impossible to hide. Madison flinched like I'd slapped her. She opened her mouth to say something else, but then our mother's voice cut through from inside the house. "Madison, get back in here and leave your sister alone," she called out sharply. Madison looked at me one more time, her eyes filled with something that might have been regret, and then she disappeared back inside. The door closed with a soft click, and I was alone again. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen, wondering if I should call my father, if maybe he could talk some sense into my mother, but I knew it was pointless. Dad had checked out of parenting years ago, content to let Mom make all the decisions while he buried himself in work and pretended everything was fine. He'd probably known about this for days and hadn't said a word to me. 40 minutes felt like an eternity as I sat on those cold concrete steps, watching cars drive past, wondering if any of the neighbors could see me sitting there with my entire life in boxes. Would they wonder what happened? Would they care? Or would they just assume I was another entitled teenager who couldn't follow her parents' rules? The sun climbed higher in the sky and I heard my mother's car start in the garage. She was really leaving for her hair appointment while I sat outside like a homeless person. The garage door opened and her silver sedan backed out, and she didn't even glance in my direction as she drove away. Finally, I saw Grammy's old blue pickup truck turn onto our street, and I felt something loosen in my chest. She pulled up to the curb and was out of the truck before the engine even stopped, her face flushed with anger and concern. "Nicole, baby, come here," she said, opening her arms, and I practically fell into them. She held me tight while I finally let myself cry, all the fear and hurt and confusion pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're going to be okay. I've got you," Grammy whispered, stroking my hair. She pulled back and looked at my face, wiping away my tears with her thumbs. "Let's get your things loaded up and get you out of here," she said, her voice gentle but firm. Together we carried the boxes to her truck, stacking them carefully in the bed. As we loaded the last box, I looked back at the house, at the bedroom window that had been mine for 18 years. The curtains were already down, and I could see Madison inside, standing in what was now her room, watching us. She raised one hand in a small wave, and I didn't wave back. "Do you want to go back inside and get anything else?" Grammy asked, following my gaze. I shook my head. "There's nothing in there I want anymore," I said, and I meant it. Everything that mattered to me was already in those boxes, or it never existed in that house to begin with. We climbed into the truck, and as Grammy started the engine, I took one last look at the place I'd called home for 18 years. It looked the same as always, neat and perfect on the outside. But I knew the truth now. That house had never been my home. It was just a building I'd been allowed to occupy until I wasn't useful anymore. The drive to Grammy's house was quiet. She didn't push me to talk, didn't ask a million questions or tell me everything would be fine. She just drove, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand, letting me know she was there. I stared out the window at the passing scenery, watching the suburbs give way to more rural areas, fields and farms stretching out on either side of the highway. "Your mother called me last week," Grammy said finally, breaking the silence. "She told me they were planning to ask you to move out after your birthday. I told her she was making a terrible mistake, that you were still so young and needed support. She said I was interfering and hung up on me." "You knew?" I asked, turning to look at her. My voice came out sharper than I intended, and I saw Grammy flinch. "I knew they were thinking about it, yes, but I didn't know she'd do it like this, on your actual birthday, with your things already packed. I thought I'd have time to talk sense into her, Or at least convince your father to stand up to her. Grammy's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and I could see the anger radiating off her in waves. I should have done more. I should have come and gotten you last week. I'm so sorry, Nicole. It's not your fault, I said quietly, and I reached over to put my hand on her arm. You're the only one who even tried to help me. Mom and Dad, they just wanted me gone. At least you cared enough to fight for me. Grammy's eyes glistened with tears, but she blinked them back and focused on the road. The rest of the drive passed in silence, both of us lost in our own thoughts. When we finally pulled up to Grammy's small yellow house with its white picket fence and garden full of roses, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. This place had always felt safe, warm, like the home my actual house never was. Grammy's house was small but cozy, just 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, with a kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and a living room filled with photos of family. Photos that included me, I realized with a start. On the mantle, on the walls, on the side tables, there I was in every stage of my life. My first day of kindergarten, my middle school graduation, a candid shot of me laughing at Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. My mother had exactly 2 photos of me in our entire house, both of them buried in albums in the basement. But here, in Grammy's house, I was visible. I was seen. Let's get you settled in the guest room, Grammy said, leading me down the short hallway. It's not big, but it's yours for as long as you need it. No conditions, no expectations. This is your home now, Nicole. She opened the door to a small bedroom with pale blue walls, a full-size bed with a white quilt, and a window that looked out over her garden. It was simple and plain, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Grammy helped me carry the boxes in from the truck, and we stacked them against one wall. Why don't you take a shower and get dressed, and then we'll have some breakfast. Or lunch, I guess, since it's almost noon, she said, glancing at her watch. I nodded, grabbing some clothes from one of the boxes, and headed to the bathroom. The hot water felt amazing against my skin, washing away the stress and fear of the morning. I stood under the spray for a long time, letting it warm me from the outside in, trying to process everything that had happened. I was homeless. Well, not technically homeless since Grammy had taken me in, but I'd been thrown out of my parents' house on my 18th birthday. What kind of person does that make me? What did I do that was so terrible that my own mother couldn't stand to have me around one more day? By the time I got out of the shower and dressed, Grammy had made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, comfort food that reminded me of being little and spending weekends at her house. We sat at her small kitchen table, and I realized I was starving. I'd been too nervous to eat dinner the night before, and I'd been kicked out before I could have breakfast. Eat up, sweetheart, Grammy said, pushing the plate closer to me. You need your strength. I took a bite of the sandwich, and it tasted better than anything I'd eaten in months. Or maybe I was just so desperate for something normal, something kind, that even a simple grilled cheese felt like a feast. So what's the plan, Nicole? Grammy asked gently after we'd eaten in silence for a few minutes. Have you thought about what you want to do now? I set down my spoon and stared at my soup, watching the steam rise from the bowl. What did I want to do? I'd been so focused on just surviving in that house, on staying out of my mother's way and avoiding conflict, that I'd never really thought about what came next. I don't know, I admitted. I was supposed to start community college in the fall. I got accepted to Portland Community College for their nursing program, but I don't know if I can afford it now. Grammy reached across the table and took my hand. How much have you saved? She asked. I thought about the account I'd been putting money into since I got my first job at 16, working weekends at a diner downtown. About $3,000, I said. I was saving for college and maybe a car eventually, but now I guess I need to use it for living expenses. The thought of watching my carefully saved money drain away on basic survival made my stomach twist. Grammy nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful. Here's what we're going to do, she said. You're going to live here rent-free. You'll help with groceries and household expenses when you can, but your main focus is going to be getting yourself set up for success. Grammy, I can't just live here for free, I protested. You're on a fixed income. I can't be a burden to you. She squeezed my hand harder. Nicole, listen to me. You are not a burden. You are my granddaughter, and I love you. Your mother's behavior today was cruel and unforgivable, but it doesn't define you or your worth. You're a smart, capable young woman, and I'm going to help you build the life you deserve. Her words made my throat tight with emotion. When was the last time someone had said they loved me and actually meant it? When was the last time someone had looked at me and seen potential instead of disappointment? Thank you, I whispered, and my voice broke on the words. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't answered the phone. Grammy stood up and came around the table, pulling me into a hug. You never have to thank me for loving you, sweetheart. That's what family is supposed to do. We stood there in her small kitchen, holding each other, and I felt something shift inside me. Maybe being thrown out was the worst thing that had ever happened to me, or maybe it was the beginning of something better. Maybe this was my chance to finally stop trying to earn love from people who would never give it and start building a life with people who actually cared. That afternoon, Grammy and I sat down at her kitchen table with a notebook and started making plans. First things first, she said, clicking her pen. We need to make sure you're enrolled in college and that your financial aid is sorted out. Have you filled out your FAFSA? I nodded. I did it back in January. I qualified for some federal grants and loans, enough to cover most of tuition. I was going to use my savings for books and supplies. Grammy wrote that down. Good. So college is covered. Now what about a job? Are you still working at the diner? I shook my head. I quit last month because my mother said I needed to focus on studying for my finals. She said I didn't need to work anymore. Of course she did, Grammy muttered, and I could hear the anger in her voice. She wanted you dependent on her so she could control you. Well, we'll fix that. Tomorrow we're going to update your resume and start looking for jobs. There's a new shopping center that opened up about 15 minutes from here. I saw they're hiring at several stores. I felt a spark of hope ignite in my chest. A job, college, a place to live. These were the building blocks of a real life. A life that was mine and not controlled by my mother's moods and preferences. I can do this, I said, more to myself than to Grammy. I can actually do this. Of course you can, Grammy said firmly. You're stronger than you know, Nicole. Your mother tried to break you, but she didn't succeed. You're still here, still fighting, and that takes courage. We spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking my boxes and organizing the guest room. It didn't take long since I didn't have much, mostly clothes, books, and a few personal items I'd managed to accumulate over the years. No photos of my family, I realized. I didn't have a single photo with my parents or Madison that I'd wanted to keep. That said everything about my childhood right there. As evening approached, my phone started buzzing with text messages. I pulled it out and saw they were from Madison. The first one said, Nicole, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean for this to happen. The second said, Mom is acting like nothing happened. She came home from her appointment and started measuring my room for new furniture. The third said, Are you okay? Where are you staying? Please let me know you're safe. I stared at the messages for a long moment, trying to decide if I should respond. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, to cut off everyone from that house and never look back. But another part of me, the part that remembered Madison as a little girl following me around and asking me to play with her, couldn't be that cruel. I typed back, I'm safe. I'm staying with Grammy. Don't worry about me. Madison's response came almost immediately. Can I call you? She asked. I thought about it, then typed, Not right now. I need some space, but we can talk eventually. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear several times as Madison typed and deleted responses, and then finally, a message came through. I understand. I love you, Nicole. I'm going to miss you. I didn't respond to that. I couldn't. Because if I let myself think about missing Madison, about missing the little sister I'd helped raise while our mother focused on herself, I'd fall apart completely. That night, I lay in bed in Grammy's guest room, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a different house. No creaking from Madison's room above me, no sound of my parents arguing in hushed voices down the hall, no feeling of walking on eggshells and wondering what mood my mother would be in tomorrow. Just quiet, peaceful silence. I pulled out my phone and opened social media, something I almost never did because my mother monitored my accounts obsessively. But she couldn't control me anymore, could she? I scrolled through my feed and saw that Madison had posted a photo of her new art studio, my old room completely transformed already with her easel and supplies taking up the space where my bed used to be. The caption read, "So excited about my new creative space. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always supporting my dreams." The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis from family, friends, and relatives. Nobody asked about me. Nobody wondered where I'd gone or why Madison suddenly had a bigger room. I was invisible, erased from the family narrative like I'd never existed at all. I closed the app and turned off my phone, rolling over to face the wall. Tomorrow I'd start building my new life, but tonight I let myself grieve for the family I'd never really had. The next morning, Grammy woke me up at 8 o'clock with a gentle knock on my door. "Rise and shine, sweetheart. We've got work to do," she said cheerfully. I dragged myself out of bed, still exhausted from a restless night of broken sleep and anxious dreams. Over breakfast, Grammy pulled out her laptop and we started searching for jobs. True to her word, the new shopping center had dozens of openings. Retail stores, restaurants, a bookstore, a coffee shop, all hiring immediately. Start with the coffee shop, Grammy suggested. Good tips, flexible hours, and it'll be good for meeting people your own age. You need to build a support system, Nicole, not just isolate yourself. I filled out 4 applications that morning, tailoring my resume for each position and writing cover letters that emphasized my customer service experience from the diner. By noon, I'd submitted everything and felt cautiously optimistic. Grammy made us lunch, and as we ate, my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I answered hesitantly. Hello? A cheerful voice responded. Hi, is this Nicole? This is Jennifer from Riverside Coffee Company. We received your application this morning, and we're really impressed with your experience. Would you be available to come in for an interview this afternoon? My heart jumped. Yes, absolutely. What time? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady and professional. How about 3 o'clock? We're in the shopping center on Harbor Boulevard next to the bookstore, Jennifer said. I confirmed the time, thanked her, and hung up, then looked at Grammy with wide eyes. I have an interview in 3 hours, I said, and I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Grammy clapped her hands together. That's wonderful. See, things are already looking up. Now, let's get you ready. You need to look professional but approachable, confident but friendly. We spent the next 2 hours going through my clothes, finally settling on black pants and a simple green blouse that Grammy said brought out my eyes. The interview went better than I could have hoped. Jennifer, the manager, was probably in her early 30s with a warm smile and an easy manner that immediately put me at ease. We talked about my experience, my schedule availability, and what I was looking for in a job. I'm starting college in the fall, I explained. So I need something with flexible hours that can work around my class schedule. Jennifer nodded. That's perfect, actually. Most of our staff are students. We're used to working around school schedules. When would you be able to start? My pulse quickened. As soon as you need me, I said. Jennifer smiled. How about Monday? We'll start you on day shifts, 8 to 3, 4 days a week, $20 an hour plus tips, which usually add another $5 to $7 per hour. Does that work? I did the math quickly in my head. At $25 to $27 an hour, 4 days a week, 8 hours per day, I'd be making over $3,000 a month. That was more than I'd made at the diner, and it would easily cover my expenses while still letting me save for college and emergencies. That's perfect, I said, trying not to sound too desperate. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Jennifer stood and shook my hand. Welcome to the team, Nicole. I think you're going to fit in great here. We'll see you Monday morning at 8 and wear comfortable shoes. You'll be on your feet a lot. I practically floated out of the coffee shop and back to Grammy's truck. I got it, I told her as soon as I climbed in. I start Monday and the pay is amazing. Grammy pulled me into a hug across the center console. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. See? You're going to be just fine. Better than fine. You're going to thrive. On the drive home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Maybe my mother had done me a favor by kicking me out. Maybe I'd been so focused on surviving in that toxic environment that I'd never realized how much it was holding me back. Now I had a job, a place to live with someone who actually loved me, and college starting in just a few months. This was my chance to build the life I'd always wanted. That weekend, I focused on settling into Grammy's house and preparing for my new job. I organized my room, set up a small desk area for studying, and helped Grammy in her garden, something my mother had never let me do at home because she said I'd just make a mess. On Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. It was my father. I stared at the screen for a long moment, debating whether to answer. Part of me wanted to ignore him completely, to let him experience what it felt like to be dismissed and forgotten. But curiosity won out. I answered. Hello? I said, my voice neutral. Nicole, it's Dad, he said like I didn't have caller ID. I wanted to check in and see how you're doing. How was I doing? Was he serious? I'm fine, I said flatly. Grammy took me in. There was a pause. That's good. That's really good. Listen, Nicole, your mother and I have been talking, and we think maybe we were a bit hasty with our decision. We'd like you to come home and discuss things like adults. A bit hasty. They'd thrown me out on my birthday with $200 and 6 boxes, and he thought they were a bit hasty. I'm not coming back, I said, and I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. I have a job now, and I'm staying with Grammy. I'm fine where I am. Nicole, be reasonable, my father said, and I could hear the frustration creeping into his voice. You're 18 years old. You can't just live with your grandmother forever. You need to come home and finish high school properly, and then we can talk about your future. I almost laughed. Dad, I graduated high school last month, remember? I was valedictorian. You and Mom didn't come to the ceremony because Madison had a dance recital the same day. There was silence on the other end of the line. He'd forgotten. Of course he'd forgotten. Regardless, he said finally, you belong here with your family. Madison misses you. Your mother misses you too, even if she has a hard time showing it. Does she miss me, or does she miss having someone to control? I asked, and the words came out sharper than I intended. Because it seems like as soon as I became a legal adult, she couldn't wait to get rid of me. My father sighed heavily. Your mother has her reasons for doing things the way she does. She thinks you need to learn independence and responsibility. This was her way of teaching you that. Teaching me. Right. Because kicking your daughter out on her birthday is such a valuable lesson. Dad, I need to go, I said. But just so you know, I'm not coming back. Not now, not ever. That house was never my home, and you were never really my parents. You were just people I happened to live with for 18 years. Nicole, don't say that, my father said. And for the first time I heard something that might have been genuine emotion in his voice. We love you. We've always loved you. Did they? Because love isn't supposed to feel like walking on broken glass every single day? Love isn't supposed to make you feel invisible and worthless? Love isn't supposed to come with conditions and expiration dates? If this is what your love looks like, I said quietly, then I don't want it. I hung up before he could respond and immediately blocked his number. My hands were shaking, but I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. I'd finally said the words I'd been holding inside for years, and the world hadn't ended. I was still here, still breathing, still moving forward. Grammy found me sitting on the back porch steps, staring out at her garden. You okay, honey? She asked, sitting down beside me. I told her about the phone call, about my father's pathetic attempt to manipulate me into coming home. He said they were hasty, I said, and I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Like, throwing me out was just a minor miscalculation and not a deliberate act of cruelty. Grammy put her arm around my shoulders. Your father has always been weak, Nicole. He lets your mother run everything and then pretends he has no responsibility for the consequences. But you're free of them now. You don't have to play their games anymore. I blocked his number, I admitted. And I'm going to block Mom's too. Grammy nodded approvingly. Good. You need space to heal and figure out who you are without their voices in your head. If they really want a relationship with you someday, they'll have to earn it back. And that starts with them acknowledging what they did wrong and apologizing sincerely. I leaned into her, resting my head on her shoulder. Thank you for being here for me, Grammy. I don't know what I would have done without you. She kissed the top of my head. You would have figured it out, sweetheart, because you're strong and resilient. But I'm glad you didn't have to do it alone. Monday morning arrived, and I woke up early, nervous and excited for my first day at Riverside Coffee Company. I dressed carefully, braided my hair to keep it out of my face, and put on the comfortable sneakers Grammy had helped me pick out at the store. You look perfect, Grammy said, handing me a travel mug of coffee and a paper bag with a bagel inside. Now go show them what you're made of. The coffee shop was busy when I arrived, the morning rush already in full swing. Jennifer greeted me with a smile and introduced me to the rest of the team. There was Marcus, a college student studying engineering who worked the espresso machine with impressive speed. Sarah, a recent high school graduate saving money to travel to Europe. And Tyler, a quiet guy in his mid-20s who handled the register and seemed to know every customer by name. Nicole, you're going to shadow Sarah today, Jennifer explained. She'll show you how we do things here, teach you the register system, and introduce you to our regular customers. Don't worry about being perfect. Just focus on learning and asking questions. Sarah was enthusiastic and patient, walking me through every step of the process. How to take orders, how to work the complicated espresso machine, how to handle difficult customers with grace and a smile. By lunchtime, my feet were aching and my head was spinning with information, but I was loving every minute of it. This was honest work, simple and straightforward, with clear expectations and immediate feedback. No mind games, no manipulation, just coffee and customers and colleagues who treated me like a human being. During my break, I sat in the back room eating the bagel Grammy had packed, and Sarah joined me. You're doing really well for your first day, she said, pulling out her own lunch. Some people take weeks to get comfortable with the espresso machine, but you picked it up fast. I smiled, grateful for the encouragement. I used to work at a diner, so I'm used to the pace and the customer service part. The coffee stuff is new, but it's actually kind of fun. Sarah laughed. Just wait until you have to make a half-calf soy milk, extra foam, no whip, double-shot caramel macchiato with exactly 2 pumps of vanilla and 1 pump of hazelnut served at exactly 140 degrees. Is that a real order? I asked, horrified. She nodded. That's Mrs. Patterson's order. She comes in every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30 on the dot. You'll meet her soon enough. We chatted for the rest of the break, and I learned that Sarah was planning to defer college for a year to save money and figure out what she really wanted to study. My parents are freaking out about it, she admitted. They think I'm ruining my future. But I just need time to breathe and figure things out, you know? I understood that more than she knew. Sometimes you had to step away from other people's expectations to discover your own path. The rest of my first day flew by, and by the time my shift ended at 3, I was exhausted but happy. Jennifer pulled me aside before I left. Great first day, Nicole. You're a natural at this. See you tomorrow at 8? I confirmed and walked out to find Grammy waiting in the parking lot. How was it? She asked as I climbed into the truck. I grinned at her. It was perfect. The people are nice, the work is straightforward, and I actually enjoyed it. This is going to work out, Grammy. I can feel it. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I never doubted it for a second. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a comfortable routine. Work 4 days a week, help Grammy around the house, and spend my free time preparing for college. I enrolled in my classes, bought my textbooks secondhand online to save money, and started mapping out my schedule for the fall semester. I was going to be taking 15 credits, a full load, including anatomy and physiology, introduction to nursing, college writing, and psychology. It was ambitious, but I was ready for the challenge. For the first time in my life, I was working toward something that was mine, not something my mother wanted or expected, just mine. My coworkers at the coffee shop became my first real friends. Sarah and I started hanging out after work sometimes, grabbing food or just walking around the shopping center talking about our lives. Marcus invited me to a study group he was part of at the library, even though I wasn't in college yet, saying I'd fit right in when classes started. Even Tyler, who was usually quiet and reserved, started opening up to me during slow afternoon shifts. You seem different than when you first started, he commented one day as we wiped down tables. More relaxed, I guess. More like yourself. I thought about that. I think I'm finally figuring out who I am without someone telling me who I should be, I said. Tyler nodded like he understood completely. That's huge. I went through something similar when I moved out of my parents' place. Took me a while to stop hearing their voices in my head, you know? Telling me I wasn't good enough or that I was making mistakes. But eventually you realize that their opinions don't define you. His words resonated deep in my chest. That's exactly what I was going through. Learning to silence the critical voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like my mother. Learning to trust my own judgment and make my own choices. How long did it take you? I asked. To stop hearing their voices? Tyler smiled. I'll let you know when it happens, but it gets quieter every day. That's the important part. One afternoon in late July, about 6 weeks after I'd been kicked out, Madison showed up at the coffee shop. I was behind the counter making a latte when I looked up and saw her standing in line, looking nervous and out of place. My stomach dropped. I hadn't spoken to her since that first day, ignoring her occasional text messages and avoiding any conversation about my family. Now here she was, in my space, invading the new life I'd been carefully building. When she reached the counter, she gave me a tentative smile. Hi, Nicole, she said quietly. Can we talk? I glanced at Jennifer, who was watching from the office with a concerned expression. I'm working, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I can't really talk right now. Madison's face fell. Please, just 5 minutes. I'll wait until your break. I need to tell you something important. Something in her tone made me pause. She looked different. Thinner, maybe, or just tired. The confident, carefree little sister I'd known seemed diminished somehow, like something had hollowed her out from the inside. Fine, I said finally. My break is in 20 minutes. Order something and wait at that table in the corner. She ordered a hot chocolate, something she'd loved since she was little, and went to sit down. I finished my shift rotation and then told Jennifer I was taking my break. Everything okay? Jennifer asked, her eyes flicking toward Madison. I'd told her a little bit about my situation, enough that she understood why I might be tense. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I'll handle it. I grabbed a bottle of water and walked over to Madison's table, sitting down across from her. Up close, she looked even worse. Dark circles under her eyes, chewed fingernails, hair that hadn't been styled with her usual care. Okay, I'm here, I said. What's so important? Madison took a shaky breath. Mom and Dad are getting a divorce, she said, and the words tumbled out in a rush. It's been awful, Nicole. Ever since you left, they've been fighting constantly. Dad blames Mom for kicking you out. Mom blames Dad for not supporting her decision, and I'm stuck in the middle of it all. I sat back in my chair, processing this information. My parents were getting divorced. Part of me felt vindicated, like their toxic relationship was finally imploding under the weight of their own dysfunction. But another part of me, the part that was still just a kid who wanted her parents to love each other and love her, felt sad. "I'm sorry you're going through that," I said, and I meant it. "But I don't know what you want me to do about it, Madison. That's their marriage, their problems. I can't fix it." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "I know you can't. I just needed someone to talk to. Someone who understands what it's like in that house." "What happened?" I asked, despite myself. "What changed?" Madison wiped her eyes with a napkin. "After you left, Grammy called Dad and tore into him. She said some really harsh things about how they'd treated you, about how they were terrible parents who'd failed you. Dad tried to defend Mom at first, but then he started really thinking about it. He went through your room after Madison moved her stuff in, and he found your journals." My stomach clenched. I'd kept journals since I was 12, pages and pages of my thoughts and feelings, all the hurt and loneliness and desperate attempts to understand why my parents didn't love me the way they loved Madison. I'd meant to take them with me, but had forgotten in the chaos of that morning. "He read them?" I asked, my voice tight. Madison nodded. "All of them. And then he confronted Mom about the things you wrote, about how invisible you felt, about how you'd cry yourself to sleep at night, about how you worked so hard just to get a single word of approval that never came. Mom tried to brush it off, said you were being dramatic, but Dad wouldn't let it go this time. He said he'd been complicit in your mistreatment and that he was ashamed of himself. I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Anger that my privacy had been violated, relief that someone had finally acknowledged my pain, and bitter satisfaction that my father was finally seeing the truth. "So they started fighting about me?" I asked. Madison shook her head. "Not just about you. About everything. About how Mom controls everything in the house. About how Dad never stands up to her. About their marriage being a facade. It all just exploded. Dad moved into the guest room 2 weeks ago, and now they're barely speaking except through lawyers." She looked down at her hot chocolate, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. "And I finally understand what you went through, Nicole. Now that you're gone, Mom has nobody else to control, so she's turned all that energy on me. Nothing I do is right anymore. My art isn't good enough. My grades aren't high enough. I don't dress appropriately. I don't act mature enough. It's like she needs someone to criticize, and now I'm the only target left." For the first time, I felt genuine sympathy for my sister. She'd been the golden child for so long that she'd never had to experience the full force of our mother's toxic need for control. But now she was getting a taste of what I'd lived with for 18 years. "I'm sorry, Madison," I said quietly. "I really am. But you need to understand something. This isn't my fault, and it isn't my responsibility to fix. Mom and Dad made their choices. They created this situation. You need to figure out how to protect yourself, just like I did." Madison looked up at me with desperate eyes. "How did you do it? How did you survive it for so long?" "I didn't really survive it," I admitted. "I just endured it until I couldn't anymore. But now I'm out, and I'm building a life that's mine. You need to do the same thing, Madison. You need to set boundaries and stop trying to be the perfect daughter, because you'll never be perfect enough for her. Nobody is." Madison wiped her tears again. "Can I come stay with you and Grammy? Just for a little while? I can't be in that house anymore, Nicole. It's suffocating me." I felt my defenses go up immediately. This was my safe space, my fresh start, and the thought of Madison bringing the drama and chaos of our family into it made my chest tight with anxiety. "Madison, I can't make that decision," I said carefully. "That's Grammy's house, not mine. And honestly, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I'm still healing from everything that happened. I need space and distance." Madison's face crumpled. "Please, Nicole. I have nowhere else to go. I don't have any friends whose parents would let me stay with them, and all our relatives live too far away for me to get to school." Her desperation was palpable, and I felt the old familiar pull, the instinct to fix things and take care of her because that's what I'd always done. But I'd also learned that I couldn't set myself on fire to keep someone else warm, even my own sister. "Talk to Grammy," I said finally. "Call her and explain your situation. If she says yes, then we'll figure it out. But I'm not going to pressure her either way, and you need to respect whatever decision she makes." Madison nodded quickly, relief flooding her face. "Okay, thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much." She pulled out her phone right there at the table and dialed Grammy's number. I watched her explain the situation, her voice shaking as she described the fighting and the divorce and how miserable she was at home. I couldn't hear Grammy's side of the conversation, but after a few minutes, Madison looked up at me with hope in her eyes. "She wants to talk to you," Madison said, handing me the phone. I took it and walked away from the table for some privacy. "Hi, Grammy," I said quietly. Her warm voice came through the line. "Nicole, honey, Madison sounds pretty desperate. What do you think? Can we help her?" I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know, Grammy. Part of me wants to help her because she's my sister and she's hurting. But another part of me is worried that bringing her into our space will bring all the family drama with it. I'm finally in a good place, and I don't want to lose that." "I understand completely," Grammy said, "and your peace of mind is the most important thing. But here's what I'm thinking. What if we let her stay for 2 weeks, kind of a trial period? She can have the pull-out couch in the living room, and we'll set some very clear boundaries. No drama, no bringing your parents' problems into the house, no disrupting your routine. If it doesn't work out, she goes back home or figures out another option." I thought about it. 2 weeks wasn't forever. And maybe Madison really had changed. Maybe she really did understand now what I'd been through. "Okay," I said finally, "but you need to set those boundaries, Grammy. Make them crystal clear." "I will, sweetheart. Don't you worry," Grammy assured me. I handed the phone back to Madison and watched as Grammy laid out the rules. Madison's face was serious as she listened, nodding occasionally. When she hung up, she looked at me with something that might have been respect. "Grammy doesn't mess around, does she?" Madison said. I almost smiled. "No, she doesn't. So you better take this seriously, Madison. This is your chance to prove that you've actually grown up and learned something. Don't waste it." Madison stood and gave me an awkward hug. "I won't. I promise. Thank you for giving me a chance, Nicole. I know I don't deserve it." That evening, Madison showed up at Grammy's house with 2 suitcases and a backpack. Grammy met her at the door and immediately sat her down at the kitchen table to go over the rules again. "This is Nicole's home," Grammy said firmly. "She's been through hell, and she's finally getting her life together. You will not disrupt that. You will not bring drama from your parents into this house. You will respect Nicole's space and her privacy. If you have a problem with your parents, you deal with it outside this house or you talk to me privately. Nicole is not your therapist or your mediator. Do you understand?" Madison nodded solemnly. "I understand, and I'm grateful to be here. I'll follow whatever rules you set." Grammy softened slightly. "Good. Now, you'll sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable. You'll help with chores, contribute to groceries if you can, and you'll be respectful of the fact that this is a small house and we're all sharing space. This is a 2-week trial. At the end of 2 weeks, we'll reevaluate." Madison agreed to everything, and we spent the evening helping her get settled in. It was strange having her there, seeing her in Grammy's cozy living room instead of in our old house. She seemed smaller somehow, less sure of herself, more vulnerable. Maybe being the golden child had been its own kind of prison, I thought. Maybe she was just now realizing what I'd known all along, that our mother's love came with impossible conditions. The first few days with Madison in the house were awkward but manageable. She stayed out of my way mostly, spending her time in the living room reading or sketching in her art notebook. She helped Grammy with dishes and laundry without being asked, and she kept her promise not to talk about our parents or the divorce unless Grammy brought it up first. I caught her watching me sometimes with this sad, uncertain expression, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. On the 4th day, I came home from work to find Madison helping Grammy in the garden, both of them covered in dirt and laughing about something. It was such a normal, peaceful scene that it made my chest ache with something I couldn't quite name. "Nicole, come help us plant these tomatoes," Grammy called out when she saw me. I changed into old clothes and joined them in the garden, and for the next hour we worked together in comfortable silence, occasionally broken by Grammy's stories about her own childhood growing up on a farm in rural Oregon. Madison asked questions and seemed genuinely interested, and I realized this might be the first time she'd ever really talked to Grammy, really listened to her stories and gotten to know her as a person, rather than just as our grandmother. "This is nice," Madison said quietly as we washed our hands at the outdoor spigot. "Being here with you guys, it's the most peaceful I've felt in months." I didn't respond immediately, but I gave her a small nod. It was nice. Despite my reservations, despite the complicated history between us, there was something healing about working together in the garden, something that felt like we might actually be building the foundation of a real sisterhood, rather than the toxic dynamic our parents had created. That night after dinner, Madison finally broke her silence about our parents. Dad wants to see you, she said carefully as we cleared the dishes. He's been asking me if I know where you are, if you're okay. He says he wants to apologize. I set down the plate I was holding and looked at her. What did you tell him? I told him you were safe and happy, and that if he wanted to talk to you, he needed to respect your boundaries and wait until you were ready, Madison said. I didn't tell him you were living here with Grammy. I figured that was your information to share if you wanted to. I felt a rush of gratitude toward her. That was exactly the right thing to do, respecting my privacy and my autonomy rather than automatically siding with our father. Thank you, I said. I'm not ready to talk to him yet. Maybe someday, but not now. Madison nodded. I figured. For what it's worth, I think he's genuinely sorry. He's been really broken up about the things he read in your journals. But I also know that sorry doesn't erase 18 years of neglect. No, it doesn't. I agreed. And even if he is sorry, I don't owe him forgiveness just because he finally decided to feel guilty. We finished the dishes in silence, and I could tell Madison was processing what I'd said. She'd grown up in a world where our parents were always right, where their authority was never questioned, where forgiveness was expected and demanded rather than earned. Learning to think differently, to prioritize her own well-being over their expectations, was going to take time. But at least she was trying. That was more than I could say for our parents. The 2-week trial period flew by faster than I expected. Madison proved herself to be a respectful and helpful houseguest, contributing to the household without taking over, respecting my space while also slowly building a connection with me. We started talking more. Real conversations about our lives and our dreams and our fears. She told me about her art, about how she'd always felt this pressure to be perfect at it, because it was the one thing that made Mom proud of her. But I don't even know if I like art anymore, she admitted one night as we sat on the back porch looking at the stars. Or if I just like the approval it gets me. That's something you'll have to figure out for yourself, I said. Without Mom's voice in your head telling you what you should want. Madison was quiet for a moment. Is that how you figured out you wanted to be a nurse? By getting away from them? I nodded. Yeah. When I wasn't constantly trying to earn their approval or avoid their criticism, I could actually hear my own thoughts. And I realized I wanted to help people, to make a difference in a tangible way. Nursing felt right. It felt like me. Madison smiled. You're going to be an amazing nurse, Nicole. You've always been good at taking care of people, even when they didn't deserve it. At the end of the 2 weeks, Grammy sat down with both of us at the kitchen table. Okay, girls, trial period is over. Madison, you've been respectful and helpful, and I appreciate that. Nicole, how do you feel about Madison staying longer term? I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and saw someone who was trying hard to grow and change, someone who was finally understanding what I'd been through and making an effort to be better. I think she can stay, I said, as long as the same rules apply and she keeps proving that she's serious about respecting boundaries. Grammy turned to Madison. What about school? Fall semester starts in a few weeks. How are you going to handle that from here? Madison had clearly been thinking about this. I looked into it, and I can transfer to Lincoln High School. It's only 15 minutes from here. I already talked to a counselor there, and they said my credits would transfer fine. I'd just need to get my transcripts from my old school and register. Grammy nodded approvingly. And what about your parents? Have you told them about this plan? Madison shook her head. Not yet. I wanted to make sure it was actually possible first. But I'll tell them this week. They're not going to like it, especially Mom. But I don't care anymore. I need to get out of that house before it destroys me the way it almost destroyed Nicole. All right then, Grammy said. You can stay. Same rules as before, and we'll add one more. You need to get a part-time job to help with expenses. Nothing crazy, just something to teach you responsibility and help you contribute to the household. Madison agreed immediately, and I felt something settle in my chest. This was going to work. We were going to be okay. That weekend, Madison went back to our parents' house to pack up the rest of her things and officially tell them she was moving out. I offered to go with her for moral support, but she said she needed to do it alone. I need to stand up to them by myself, she explained. I've been hiding behind you or them my whole life. It's time I learned to use my own voice. She came back 3 hours later, her face blotchy from crying, but her expression determined. How'd it go? I asked as she carried boxes into the living room. Madison set down the box she was holding and took a deep breath. Mom screamed at me for 20 minutes, called me ungrateful, selfish, a traitor, said I was abandoning the family just like you did. Dad tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. Eventually, I just started packing my stuff while she yelled, And when I had everything loaded in Grammy's truck, I told them I'd be in touch when I was ready to have a rational conversation. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it. I actually did it. I pulled her into a hug, and she clung to me like a drowning person clings to a life raft. "I'm proud of you," I said, and I meant it. That took real courage. We spent the rest of the evening unpacking her things and rearranging the living room to make it feel more like her space. Grammy ordered pizza for dinner, and the three of us sat around the kitchen table eating and talking and laughing, and it felt like family. Real family. The kind where people actually cared about each other and supported each other instead of tearing each other down. This was what I'd always wanted, what I'd always needed, and I'd only found it after being thrown away by the people who were supposed to love me most. August rolled into September, and everything fell into place like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. I started my first semester of college, diving into my nursing classes with an enthusiasm I'd never felt for anything before. The coursework was challenging but exciting, and I loved every minute of it. My professors were supportive, my classmates were friendly, and I finally felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Madison started at Lincoln High School and surprised everyone, including herself, by joining the debate team instead of continuing with art. "I want to learn how to argue effectively," she explained. "How to stand up for myself and use my words as weapons when I need to. Art was Mom's dream for me. Debate is mine." Work at the coffee shop continued to be a steady source of income and friendship. I'd been promoted to shift supervisor after just 3 months, which came with a raise and more responsibility. Jennifer told me I was one of the best employees she'd ever had. Reliable and hardworking and genuinely kind to customers. "You're going places, Nicole," she said. "I can tell. This job is just a stepping stone for you." She was right. I was going places, building a future that was entirely my own creation. My relationship with Madison grew stronger every day. We weren't just sisters anymore. We were friends, allies who'd survived the same toxic environment and come out the other side determined to be better. One evening in late October, almost 6 months after I'd been kicked out, Grammy called both of us into the living room. She had a serious expression on her face, and my stomach dropped. Was something wrong? Was she sick? "Girls, I need to talk to you about something," Grammy said, gesturing for us to sit on the couch. "I got a call today from your father. He wants to meet with all of us, including me, to talk about what happened and try to make amends. He says your mother is in therapy now, working through some issues, and they both want a chance to apologize and potentially rebuild a relationship with you two." Madison and I exchanged glances. "What do you think?" Madison asked me quietly. I thought about it carefully, weighing my options and my feelings. Part of me wanted nothing to do with them, wanted to keep living my life without their toxic presence. But another part of me, the part that had read enough psychology textbooks to understand the value of closure, thought maybe it was worth hearing what they had to say. "I'll meet with them," I said finally, "but on our terms, in a neutral location, with Grammy there as a mediator. And they need to understand that listening to their apology doesn't mean I'm forgiving them or welcoming them back into my life. It just means I'm willing to hear what they have to say." Madison nodded in agreement. "Same for me. I'll listen, but I'm not making any promises." Grammy set up the meeting for the following Saturday at a quiet restaurant downtown, a neutral space where none of us had any emotional attachment. When the day arrived, I dressed carefully in jeans and a nice sweater, wanting to look put together and confident. Madison wore a dress I'd never seen before, something she'd bought with her own money from her new part-time job at a bookstore. We drove to the restaurant together in Grammy's truck, none of us speaking much, all of us lost in our own thoughts. When we walked into the restaurant, I saw my parents already sitting at a corner table, looking older and more worn than I remembered. My father's hair had gone grayer, and my mother's usual perfect appearance seemed diminished somehow, less polished. They both stood when they saw us, and for a moment nobody moved. Then my father stepped forward. "Nicole, Madison, thank you for agreeing to meet with us," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. We sat down, Grammy positioning herself between us and our parents like a protective barrier. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table until my mother finally spoke. "I've been in therapy for the last 3 months," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Working through some issues from my own childhood that I didn't realize were affecting how I parented you girls. And I've come to understand that I was wrong, deeply wrong, in how I treated you, Nicole. I was cruel and controlling, and I failed you as a mother. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air, and I studied my mother's face, looking for signs of sincerity or manipulation. She looked genuinely remorseful, but words were easy. Actions were what mattered. "Why?" I asked simply. Why did you treat me the way you did? What did I ever do to make you hate me so much? My mother flinched like I'd hit her. I didn't hate you, Nicole. I never hated you. I was projecting my own insecurities and failures onto you. You reminded me of myself at your age, and I resented that. I resented your independence and your strength because I'd never had those things. So I tried to break you down instead of building you up. It was wrong, and I'm so sorry. Tears were streaming down her face now, genuine tears that I'd never seen before. My father spoke next, his voice thick with emotion. I was a coward, Nicole. I saw what your mother was doing to you, and I did nothing to stop it. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere, that she knew best. But the truth is, I was just too weak to stand up to her, and that makes me just as guilty as she is. When I read your journals, when I saw all the pain you'd been carrying alone for so many years, it destroyed me. You deserved so much better than what we gave you, and I'm deeply, profoundly sorry. I sat there listening to their apologies, feeling a complex mix of emotions, anger, sadness, relief, grief for the childhood I'd never had, and cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different going forward. I appreciate the apologies, I said finally, choosing my words carefully. And I'm glad you're both working on yourselves. But you need to understand that this doesn't fix everything. You can't erase 18 years of damage with a few months of therapy and some tearful apologies. If you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, you're going to have to earn it slowly, over time, with consistent actions that prove you've actually changed. My mother nodded, wiping her tears. We understand. We're not asking for forgiveness or for things to go back to how they were. We just want a chance to do better, to be better, if you'll allow us that. Madison spoke up then, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. I want the same thing Nicole does. Prove you've changed through your actions, not just your words. And know that we're both doing fine without you. We don't need you anymore. But if you can show us that you're genuinely different people now, maybe we can build something new, something healthier. The conversation continued for another hour. Awkward and painful, but also honest in a way our family had never been before. We talked about boundaries and expectations, about what a potential relationship might look like going forward. My parents agreed to continue therapy, both individually and as a couple, and to respect our space and our autonomy. When we finally left the restaurant, I felt exhausted but also lighter, like I'd been carrying a heavy weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Grammy drove us home in silence, and when we got back to her house, the three of us sat on the back porch and watched the sunset together, not needing to say anything because we all understood. We'd survived, we'd rebuilt, and we were going to be okay. 6 months after being thrown out on my 18th birthday, I had a life I'd never imagined possible. I was thriving in college, excelling at my job, living in a home filled with love and support, and building real relationships based on mutual respect instead of control and manipulation. My parents were working on themselves, and maybe someday we'd have a relationship that was healthy and genuine. Or maybe we wouldn't, and that was okay too. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. My worth wasn't determined by whether my parents loved me or approved of me. My worth was inherent, unchangeable, and mine to define. And that was the greatest gift I could have ever received. So if you're out there struggling with a toxic family situation, feeling invisible or unloved or like you're not good enough, I want you to know something. You are enough, exactly as you are. And sometimes the family that's supposed to love you fails. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you hurt you instead. But that doesn't mean you're broken or unlovable. It means they failed, not you. Build your own family from the people who see you and value you and celebrate you. Create a life that's yours. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you deserve less than love and respect and kindness. Because you deserve all of that and more. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with someone who might need to hear this message, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories about overcoming adversity and building the life you deserve. Remember, your past doesn't define your future. You do.